When your kid screams over socks or has a meltdown in the cereal aisle, it might not be bad behavior. It could be their nervous system going into full blown panic mode because something as small as a seam might feel like barbed wire, or that echo in the store might feel like an attack. Welcome to the Soaring Child podcast, where parents of children with ADHD learn tips and tricks to help their child soar at home, at school, and in life. We feature interviews with experts, medical professionals, and parents just like you who are learning how to reduce ADHD symptoms using food and other natural strategies. Because children with ADHD deserve to soar just like every other child. I'm Dana Kay, your host. Hello, parents. This is Dana Kay here with another edition of the Soaring Child podcast. Now, have you ever watched your child completely fall apart over something that seemed, so small, like a tag on the shirt, or that echo in that school gym, or, the noise that comes from those fluorescent lights? Maybe you've chalked it up to ADHD. But what if there's something else going on beneath the surface? What if your child isn't misbehaving? Their sensory system is just overwhelmed. Now, today we're diving into an overlooked piece of the ADHD puzzle, and that is sensory processing. So many kids with ADHD are also navigating the world with sensory systems that are either on high alert or barely registering input, and most people don't even realize it. So to help us unpack this, I am joined by Michael Soria, a true powerhouse in the world of special education. He is the National Partnership Director for PlayLearn, and he's been in the world of special education for over 35 years as a teacher, as a consultant, as a trainer, as a leader in professional development. He's trained over 10,000 educators. A lot of educators across 800 school districts, and he's spoken at major conferences worldwide. But Michael doesn't just speak from professional experience. He's also a dad to 3 boys, including one with autism. So this work is deeply personal to him. And today he's going to help us break down what sensory processing is, how it shows up in children with ADHD and autism, and what parents and teachers can do to support kids who feel the world more intensely than others. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dana, and thank you for the work that you do. It's so important. I mean, we are helping parents, but I think it starts at the grassroots level, just like you, another parent who has a child with ADHD. So thank you for your work. And when I was reading your bio, I'm like, whoa, this woman is very impressive. But it started with, necessity is the mother of invention. You had to get going. So thank you for having me and thank you for what you do.
No, thank you for what you do. And, it sounds like that your personal situation led you to do what you do today as well, which is just, I mean, it comes from deep within the soul. Look, I think let's start with the basics. Okay. What exactly is sensory processing, and how does it connect to ADHD in children?
That's a great question. And I have this question a lot. So I appreciate you asking it. And I think your viewers will really have a deeper understanding once we leave of the link between the two. And I think, with sensory processing, it really is just how the brain takes in information from all of our senses. But before we go any further, how many senses do you think that most people would say we have to?
We've got our sight, we've got our hearing, we've got our taste, we've got our smell, and we've got our touch.
You know what? You're exactly right. But what if I told you and all of our talks that I do that I talk about the 8 senses?
Mm-hmm.
And have you heard of the 8 senses
I
before?
have not, so I am intrigued.
Okay, well, this is going to tie in very deeply with uh, people with ADHD. So the 3 hidden senses and they're hidden because not a lot of people know about them. But their vestibular, which is movement,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't that ring a bell
Yep.
with people that have ADHD?
Yes.
Okay. Then there is the proprioceptive. Okay. And that is, our external body awareness. And we'll talk about it in this podcast. But you ever heard of a student with ADHD be labeled as clumsy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Well, there could be that link right there of an ADHD challenge and a sensory processing disorder. And then we have the interoception. And this one is really, really important because this is our internal body awareness. And when I talk about interoception, have you ever heard about a student, a kiddo who doesn't know that they feel bad, doesn't know that they have a temperature?
Mhm.
Okay. So that's interoception, how our internal body feels. And so if you have a processing disorder there and you have ADHD, maybe you're labeled lethargic, but maybe it's both. So I really, in all of my talks, I talk about the three hidden senses because you mentioned the one, Dana, you get an A+ for that. Um, but really, it's the three that are hidden that really correlate very deeply with ADHD and the challenges that those people have.
That's fascinating. And, again, not a lot of people would hear all of that. So thank you for sharing that with listeners and making them aware. It goes just beyond those five senses. Now, what are some common signs that a child with ADHD might also be struggling with sensory challenges? Because I know, look, as a parent, you don't know if it's just ADHD. You don't know if it's ADHD and SPD, which is sensory processing. You don't know if it's ADHD and anxiety. And so, what are those sensory challenges that might go unnoticed?
I think, Dana, I hit the first one about, oh, that student can't sit in their seat. They're
Hmm.
running around. Well, it could be that they have the H, the hyperactivity, but what if it's also the fact that their vestibular processing is out of balance? And now it's a double whammy. I have to say this. I I played on a rugby team. As people, you can see me like, maybe, are you sure? But I did in college. And we had a,
Right, can we just, okay, we're just going to take a step back from sensory processing for a second. So, being Australian,
I know,
that lives in the US, we play a lot of rugby. Not me personally, my husband definitely. Obviously, my children weren't born there, but we play a lot of rugby union, rugby league. So I'm curious, which form of rugby did you play?
I played in college.
So what
So,
type?
well, that's a good question. I mean, I played rugby league.
Rugby league.
You're
Okay.
right.
You go.
Now, here's the interesting comment about that is that we played a I think they were a high school Australian team.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, we lost 50-0. And those of you who played rugby would know it would be nil, not nothing.
Yes.
50-0. And they came up to us and said it was the best team they've ever played in the States,
In America. Oh
in
my,
America.
that's funny.
In my story about that is our mantra was we're small and we're slow.
Mm.
Okay. And so think about, no, this is a joke. Like we were actually very good, but we had two things against us, right?
Yes.
And so if you think about the ADHD and sensory processing disorders, you have two strikes against you.
Mm.
And so that really is what I wanted to bring home. And it shows up in a lot of different ways. What about that student who, after lunch, they're just sitting there and they can't focus? But what if the focus is also a vestibular or a proprioceptive processing disorder? What if it's the lights around them that they feel out of balance? And so those are some of the ways that it shows up. But if it's sensory processing and the ADHD, again, it's like that double whammy. And now we're in for, a long haul, so to speak.
Mm.
But we'll talk about how we can get out of that later.
Yeah, for sure. And so, what are some things that parents might see at home?
Well, how about fidgeting? How about not finishing their meals? How about I have a personal story. I was working with somebody and I was working as an educational consultant, and this student wouldn't didn't like to read. And I asked the parent, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm trying to read to the student. She won't. We're trying to sit down and do reading. And they're like, nothing's working. I said, what does she like to do? And she says, well, she likes to go upside down on the monkey bars and just swing. And I said, have you ever thought about reading to her there and going to her environment? So you're seeing that like that the student's environment, they don't want to sit still. Um, they they're playing with fidgets all the time. They get overwhelmed. Maybe if the TV's on or the while the washer and dryer is going, while the dishwasher is going. So it's that complete overload
Hmm.
that you would see at home of different competing sounds, different competing sights. I have to tell you another personal story, Dan. If I showed you my bookshelf, it would be unbelievably immaculate. Your house looks very immaculate. If it wasn't, I would go in and fix everything because I have sensory processing disorders. And so, is your student having to have everything in a certain particular arrangement? That would also be a way that you would know.
Okay, and so I want to take a step back. You mentioned they may not finish dinner. I'm curious about that. What, in relation to sensory processing would stop them from finishing dinner?
Well, what if they don't like the actual texture
Mm-hmm.
of it?
Yeah, it is.
I love risotto. My son, Matthew, no. I mean, he would kind of eat it, but things that were mushy, not so much. If you put a crunchy carrot in front of him, it would be gone like that. So it really is the textures of the taste of going into the person's mouth. I'm glad you said that, Dana, because if I asked you what one of the number one snacks for students with sensory processing disorders would be, what would you think it is?
Crunchy carrots?
Well, that's good, but we yes, carrots are good, but really it's like goldfish crackers or Cheetos, so it is crunchy, right? So maybe that child doesn't finish the meal because they don't like the textures. Or maybe after 3 minutes, their mind has gone somewhere else. There's the H coming out.
Yeah.
Maybe that student doesn't want to sit in a chair and it just grates them and they have to get up. So
Yeah.
those are some ways.
And I think, look, there's probably a lot of parents that are listening that have a picky eater. And it can be really, really hard. And I know what that feeling is like. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. I'm so glad that you're here discussing this and, going to give us some strategies that parents can definitely use because I know that that's one that is felt by a lot of listeners. Now, I can see how all of this would get overlooked and could be very misunderstood in a school setting. Um, what are schools doing these days? Why do these sensory needs? I mean, it's becoming more and more in our media. It's becoming more and more people are becoming more and more aware of it. But why do they often get overlooked or misunderstood?
Um, that is really to me that quintessential question that you asked him. And what we're doing is we're looking at the result and we're calling that a negative behavior. And if there's anything that I could tell your audience is that it's not their fault. With ADHD and sensory processing disorders combined, it's really not their fault. And so what we're looking at in schools is Oh, my son Matthew has a behavior issue. We're not looking at another key word. I'm sure you have a brilliant audience, but in the school world, in the educational world, we use the word antecedents. Okay. What happens? What triggered that? So too many times we're working with the behavior and we're not working with what caused the behavior. And people listening, if you can start thinking of it that way, you've already started winning the battle.
Yeah, definitely. And it's what's underlying, what contributed to that scenario. I think educators that may be listening, but also parents listening, it can sometimes be hard to decipher between ADHD and those sensory issues. So how can we begin to sort of tell the difference? Because I know that as the example that you just gave, a teacher could be just going, well, he's just, or or she's just behaving badly, or, oh, she's got the label of ADHD. That's just from that. But how can we start sort of telling that difference between the two things?
Another great question. And what I recommend when I do my trainings, there is a 95-point sensory processing checklist.
95 point.
Yes,
Very
there are
impressive.
95 questions in that sensory processing checklist. And it goes into the each of the now that you know, Dana, of the eight senses, and
Mhm.
it's an inventory on finding out more about that child and ascertaining is it behavior or is there a processing disorder based upon the questionnaire?
And who generally does that? Because I know that there's, teachers in schooling systems, they have a lot of students, they're overwhelmed. Parents, that are fighting battles on a day-to-day basis, putting out fires in their home environment. I take a step back and think about what it was like with my son. I mean, just the thought of doing a 95-point checklist seems very overwhelming for me as a parent, but I could imagine as a teacher as well.
Yes, and the first thing when you hear the word 95 and I saw your response, the best way to do anything, especially with students with ADHD and sensory processing, is chunking it, putting it into bite-sized little bits. Never ask anybody. I mean, Dana, if you ask me 95 questions right now, I would say, great, thank you very much. I have to go do the dishes.
Well, thank you for
So,
giving us the permission to chunk it down. I really, really appreciate that for sure.
yes.
Is this a questionnaire that an adult would ask a child, or is it the adult filling it out themselves?
What I like a blended role if possible, and your occupational therapist is a great resource.
Mm.
Teachers do so many different things, but they are not experts in this area. They're experts in loving our students, right? And loving our kids. And that's invaluable, but they need professional assistance that comes from your OTs, your LSSPs, your, professional, psychologists on staff. Those are the people that the teachers and or you as a parent should seek if you feel like there might be a sensory processing disorder. It's also great to look at that, not to complete it, but look at to see the kind of questions.
Yeah.
Because what you'll hear in a little bit, or maybe now, is collaboration is the key to all this.
Mm.
Parent, student, school.
Yeah, no, definitely collaboration and having everyone on the same team for sure. And I love that you just said just having a look over it, because sometimes awareness of something can just bring that out. And so knowing what is included in that can definitely help guide parents on that path of working out if it is something like sensory processing disorder. Hey, Soaring Child listeners, the episode is brought to you in part by the ADHD Thrive Institute and Dana Kay, the author of the best-selling book, Thriving with ADHD. If you have a child with ADHD and are looking for natural ways to bring more peace and calm to your home, this book will provide a step-by-step plan to get you started. Think of it like your ADHD guidebook, helping you determine what foods are best for your children with ADHD, what foods to avoid, which supplements are typically most effective, and how to overcome common obstacles, and so much more. It is possible to thrive with ADHD. This book can help. Learn more at adhdthriveinstitute.com/book. Again, that's adhdthriveinstitute.com/book. Now let's get back to today's episode. Okay, so we've dived into what it is. We have looked at what are some of the common signs that a child with ADHD may be struggling with those sensory challenges. We've talked about why it often gets overlooked or or misunderstood. And we've also looked at how parents and or teachers can really start to begin to tell the difference between those needs of ADHD versus sensory processing. So for families that are listening, thinking, okay, I think my child may have some sensory issues and they're new to all of this. What are a few simple strategies or tools that they can actually use right now to support their child? And I'm just going to say before you answer that one, for those that are tuning in via YouTube, you will see Michael's background here, and it is bright, it is clean, it is fresh, it is looks amazing. Definitely looks like something with a kid that has got some of those challenges would probably really enjoy. So let's dive in, Michael. What are some of those things that parents, and some strategies or tools that they can start using to support their children?
Well, Dana, before we get into that specific question, I want to get a little broad on it. There are four things, I call it my four C's, for parents to know.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing is consistency.
Yes.
And, and what I mean by consistency, there are two parts. Part one with consistency, we should be doing it. And this is for teachers and parents. We should build a sensory plan. And my recommendation is 5 to 10 minutes every hour of the school day. We should be spending time on sensory. Okay. The second part of this inconsistency is if we do this activity at school, parents, please, 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 please also do it at home.
Yeah.
Those are the two signs of consistency. On a regular basis and the same activities at school, integrate those into home. So that's my first C.
Yep. And I'm sitting on the edge of my seat because I definitely want to know what the following three C's are. Consistency, I talk about a lot because if you do it once or you do it once every, 3 weeks, unfortunately, it won't be able to have the same effects, will it?
Correct. I could go into my garage right now and I could go work out. And then 3 weeks later work out. It's not going to be very effective. But
Yep.
I am in there 3 to 4 times a week and it's more effective. And if I did 5 to 6, then it'd be much more
Better.
So we should give everybody should give themselves grace when in terms like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one thing you do from the school. So don't overload yourself.
Completely agree there.
The second C is calm changes, otherwise known as transitions. Okay. We know people with ADHD and sensory processing disorders are not good at changes. Okay. And let's be real, Dana. Nobody's really great at changes. Okay. I'm sitting here and I'm doing my work, walking my dog, talking to you. And if somebody rang the doorbell, I would have some sensory process. I would feel anxious.
Yep.
So under that, calm changes, what I want to see is I want, and here's some, get into some specifics. How about some breathing techniques for 3 to 5 minutes before you do something else? Parents, before you go into a car, off on a trip, why don't you have your child maybe do some jumping jacks to get them up to transition? But we need to be doing something specific on that transition. And those calm changes, if we're not, that's where most of the antecedents that we just talked about, Dana, become behavior problems.
Mm.
So that's critical. Transitions is the most, and teachers do it as well.
Yep.
Do during every transition.
I love those. I love those ideas, for sure. You know, we talk a lot about breathing on the podcast here. Had a number of experts on the podcast, and it's so important, you know, to give your child those skills. You know, and you've just reinforced that, Michael, in that, you know, giving your child that tool and doing it consistently is going to be, you know, they're going to take that through life.
Now, and if they can learn one or two calming strategies
Mm-hmm.
that they can use for their life,
Yep.
they're going to be better off than a lot of us that didn't learn
Yes,
that.
I always say, I wish my parents taught me how to breathe and meditate before I left home, because my early 20s would have been a lot more smoother.
Completely agree. Completely
So
agree.
what's the third C?
To me, it's probably the most important one of all. Communication.
Mm-hmm.
Communication between school and home.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean honest communication.
Yep.
Let me give you some specific examples what I mean, Dana. If my son Matthew had a night where he did not sleep well, I would want to tell my teacher that.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be prepared if he was lying, if he was taking a nap, it wasn't because he was misbehaving or he wasn't interested, it's because there's something that happened before.
Yeah.
And teachers, I also employ that you tell your parents the activities. Okay. Matthew had a fantastic day today. He liked this. And in this communication, parents, the best activities that you can do with your kids are the ones that they tell you they like the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want the parents to tell, like, Matthew likes crunchy carrots. Okay. Though that communication, if we have really true two-way communication, our children are going to be much more successful.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think communication's so important, you know, between the school and at home. But I also love the fact that you said the ones activities that your children like the best are the ones that you want to be doing with them or promoting them to do, because, you know, I do a lot of genetics inside the business, and, you know, a lot of kids with ADHD, they hyper focus on certain things, and the way that you can actually help them balance or, you know, have enjoyment is actually promoting the things that they like. Yes, I understand media devices, electronic devices,
Yeah,
computer games, that's a little bit different, but
it
you
is
know, if
different, right?
it is different, and, you know, can really affect brain function and things like that, so we do need to monitor that. But you know, even if it's just something that they show us an interest in, really help them in exploring that further. So I love that you said that. Okay, and what's the final C?
You know what, Dana, this gives me to a point. I want to do a small activity that I do in all of my trainings.
Yes.
Okay. So I like to focus on positives.
Yes.
And so Dana, if you think about a place where you feel calm, sensory wise, what would that be? What would make you feel calm? Now, I usually have the audience close their eyes, but since we're on a podcast, you don't have to.
Hmm. Well, can I just say, and this is going to be a little bit of a funny thing, but my dog is under my table right now and he is snoring. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that noise is just so calming. And so when I'm actually lying down with my dog, and I don't know if people that don't have dogs will relate to that, but he is very calming with me. So in my bed at night, when he's lying down there and snoring, that actually brings me calm and peace.
Okay, so we're kindred spirits because my dog is right next to me and she is snoring too. Now let's take this to the next step, Dana. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel open. It makes me feel relaxed. It makes me feel ready to focus. It makes me feel clear.
Clear, okay, and focused and calm and open. So, Dana, we can't have if that was an answer and you were a student in the classroom, we can't take the dog. But what if we recorded the sounds of your dog snoring
Mm.
and during transition that you can put some headphones on and you can close your eyes, you can hear the dog for 5 minutes. And then we say, okay, and we have the lights come up or you start to open your eyes and we say, okay, now we're going here. Do you think you would have a better chance at self-regulation?
Yes, and I'm totally getting off this podcast. I'm going to record my dog scream, and my husband is going to think I'm crazy. What an amazing exercise, Michael. Like that is just it just highlights exactly what you've been talking about and can totally see how that one little thing could just change the next experience for that child.
And if parents, I give you one take-home activity, it is that to find out. Now, Dana, if you did that to me, it would be very easy. I love, love, love the ocean. I could be in the ocean for days. Matthew, for my kids who are all swimmers, are all swimmers, put us in the water, put us in the ocean. So if I'm at school, maybe I am looking at waves, a YouTube video of waves and the ocean, and it's calming, peaceful. And maybe I have a little thing of sand that I can smell. But put me in that environment. So parents, put your kids in the environment where they feel comforted, safe, all the things you said. That is powerful.
Powerful and absolute gold right there, Michael. Definitely going to, not that my kids have any sense, well, they probably, everyone's got some sensory issues,
Yeah.
but, nothing that's overwhelming for them right now. But I think even if they don't, that exercise on its own, in its own right, is brilliant.
Even if they don't, they still have the ADHD, which makes changes difficult.
Definitely, for sure. Now,
So,
look, Michael, you've worked with, as we said earlier, like 10,000 educators, 800 school districts. What's one thing that you wish more schools understood or did differently when it comes to supporting kids with both ADHD and sensory processing differences?
well, it's the fourth C.
Mm.
It's the compassion. We even when it feels like,
Yes, I forgot the fourth
well,
C.
that's the fourth. Well, you led right into it. You didn't even
My,
know. But it really is. If you think about it, is back to the point of it's not their fault. Have compassion even in the challenging times. And teachers, what I would tell you is this is not, now there are times, there are behavior issues, but with ADHD and sensory processing disorders, it's not personal.
Mhm.
Have compassion for the multi-categorical challenges that student, that child is having. And teachers, do the same exercise for yourself about the calming place. And when you're at, on your teacher break, go there. So that compassion for the child and compassion for yourself.
Michael, I absolutely love that. You're 100% right there. I think it's, having compassion for you, for the child, and also for yourself. Now, you've dropped so much gold in this episode. I'm going to ask you to just drop one more gold nugget, as I do with every every guest that comes on the podcast. If you could just share, and you've already dropped some great gold nuggets. Let's try something different. But if you could just share one small actionable tip that parents can start using today, what would that be?
It's related, but I think I would do an inventory of all the things that my child likes. And from food to what sports they like to play, what TV shows they like to play, they like to watch, what video games they like to watch, what animals if they have any, and build an actual visual portfolio of all of these things. And however you want to keep it, laminate it, whatever, because here's what I recommend. If I'm really to the nth degree stressed and I'm really having a meltdown and it's unavoidable, because I think we've all probably had one in our life. How cool would it be if I'm not at home and I'm having this complete meltdown and I open up this little book or portfolio and the first thing I see is me with my dog, visually see it. Or what if it's me with my parents, a visual picture, and I'm about to lose my mind. I'm about to throw a fit. I'm about to throw a tantrum. Okay. That is something that I would highly recommend. Something like that.
Brilliant, Michael. Love that idea, and so simple, yet sounds like it could be so effective. This episode has been so wonderful with you, Michael. Unexpected and just packed full of brilliant ideas for families and for listeners out there. I just want to thank you so much for breaking it all down in really, it's such an approachable way, and I think really empowering as well. For so many families, understanding, I think, sensory needs alongside ADHD can really, I don't know, create this light bulb moment, and I know the conversation that we've had today are really going to help parents just feel more equipped, but also less alone, because that's one of the most important things that we talk about on the podcast. When you've got a child that's got sensory ADHD challenges, it can feel like you're on an island by yourself. But this is a clear example where, just having guests share this knowledge and this passion with the listeners can bring so much hope and, so much to them feeling less alone. Michael, please tell listeners where they can find and follow you online.
Well, I am on LinkedIn, Michael Soria, and if you have any questions about this, you can email me at michael@playlearn.com. I'm happy to help. I know that it is a challenge as a parent, and you as well, Dana, that this is not easy. And I think that the more that we can share what goes well, what we need help with, the more powerful knowledge is power, and so is community. And so I appreciate you having me here. And listeners, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Knowledge is power, and so is community. Michael, thank you once again for joining us today. To all our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, share it with your teacher, share it with your therapist, or even just a fellow parent who might benefit from this conversation as well, because these insights could really change a child's daily experience. Now, if you're not already subscribed, make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss another episode that, as you can tell by this episode, are jam-packed full of expert tips, real stories, and hope for families just like yours. Listeners, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Soaring Child. I'm Dana Kay, your ADHD health practitioner. Keep on thriving. Thank you for listening to the Soaring Child podcast today. To learn more about how to help your child with ADHD soar using natural strategies, visit our website at adhdthriveinstitute.com and follow us on social media at ADHD Thrive Institute.